All right, next we have from There's Nothing Wrong with Lowering the Barrier to Entry in Fighting Games by Brick. I think I reacted to his videos before, and overall I think I agreed with his opinions. I think he was talking about Grand Blue specifically in that video, so we'll see where this goes. Alright, there's nothing wrong with lowering the barrier to entry in fighting games. Let's see what he has to say.
So, yeah, Midnight said, been seeing a lot of discourse over fighting games becoming too easy / alienating older fans, and was curious on your thoughts. This recent wave was started by dash macros and if games should have them. He also followed up and he said, the only qualms I have against modern fighting games is how they go about making motions easier. I think Grand Blue does it well, the 2x KO, 2-KO Salamanca, getting rid of it entirely for only a skill button is too far. So that's kind of two separate ideas we sort of talk about.
Okay, so I think I made a video about motion inputs, I think not that long ago. Where I stand on that specific issue is that if a game is built around it, then let it exist on its own. But I feel like if you're going to have motion inputs and then give players an option, the best way, the best game that has done it, in my opinion, is DNF Duel's version of like simple inputs versus motion inputs, where there's an actual like positive and negative to doing motion inputs and simple inputs, where in Grand Blue I feel like it's kind of there but not really. Like in Grand Blue there's no reason why you shouldn't do simple inputs. Like there's literally no reason for it, because like yeah, it scales down your combos, but number one, it only applies to the first special move in the combo. The other move scales normally, so it doesn't really matter. And especially for DPs, which is what I use simple inputs for. I do motion inputs for everything else. Well, for Fairy it's a little bit different because I actually do the simple input for GG just so I don't fuck it up. But like for DPs, for all the characters I play, I always do the simple input, because for reversals I'm not looking at damage, I just want to get out of pressure. So like why would I do motion inputs for a DP when there's a high likelihood that I could fuck it up and get punished for it, when I can just do the same thing with a button and get it out frame one? Like Grand Blue is kind of there, but like the detriment from doing a simple input does not matter in like the large scale of the game, in my opinion. It's not detrimental enough. In vanilla Grand Blue, there was a detriment to using simple inputs. It had less damage and higher cooldown on the special. Yeah, I feel like the cooldown needed to stay. If they were going to, like, I don't know if it applied to the whole combo overall in the original Grand Blue, but from what I understand, it only applies to the special that you start the combo with, and then every other special coming after it, the damage scaling doesn't change. Like, it's just back to normal. And I feel like there should be more detriments to using simple inputs. But that's just me. The entire combo in OG Grand Blue was scaled if you did the simple input at any point. At any point? Okay, that's different. Yeah, that's really different. I don't think that happens in Rising. But yeah, it's only the special move that starts the combo that's scaled, which is really dumb. That's like really dumb. I forgot what the guy in the stream said before that one. No, in Rising it's the first special move, or if the move is a link and not a combo. Yeah. I feel like if they implemented the cooldown to the simple inputs, it would be a lot better. Like I would actually have to go out of my way to do like DP inputs to get my DP back faster. But like I said in my motion inputs video, I think DNF Duel had the best version of simple inputs versus motion inputs, because the way that it works in DNF is that number one, the damage is scaled no matter what, and secondly, the meter that you get passively over time the cooldown for regeneration lasts way longer if you do a simple input. So not only do you do less damage, but the regeneration for your energy for special moves slows significantly. And that's a really big deal because you don't start the match in DNF Duel with max energy. You start with half energy, and then as you take damage, you build up your energy bar. And so if you're doing simple inputs all the time, the fact that you're not regenerating energy throughout your combos, for example, like if you're doing simple inputs in your combos, by the time your combo finishes, you won't have enough energy to finish your combo or get any significant Oki pressure. So like you have to do the special moves to do like actual like good damage and stuff like that, and keep your energy regeneration high. So yeah, I think DNF Duel has the best system for it. Anyway, let's move forward.
About them in a little bit more detail, right? But with the idea of fighting games getting too easy and alienating older fans, right? I gotta.
Oh yeah, that point. I'm not an older fighting game fan, so I can't speak for them. But I think that viewpoint is very odd to me. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but like let's just say for like a game genre that I do play relatively frequently, I guess like platformers was like the first genre that I started off with. Like if they released a Sly 5 and they simplified the controls. I mean, the Sly series doesn't have complex controls in the first place, but let's just say like in order to like do Sly's Ninja Spire commands, like you would just have to jump near a lamppost to climb it instead of doing jump and circle. Like, would I be alienated by it? I don't know. Like, it would be weird, but like there would have to be something to compensate for it, I feel like. And I feel like a lot of fighting games do compensate for it, in my opinion. Like, they make the games easier, but like the mental stacks needed to play more modern fighting games is way more pronounced because everything dies much more quickly, and then neutral is way more harder in modern fighting games, in my opinion. Like, maybe not the execution part, but the mind games of it, because moves in more modern fighting games are more powerful. So like the mental stacks in the neutral control and like stuff of that nature is like way harder to deal with. So like things are easier, but the mind games are like way more pronounced. Fighting game devs want newer players so they can make money, but fighting game players don't want the skills they developed over years to be thrown out the window in favor of simplicity. That's fair. That's fair. But it also depends on what game we're talking about too. Because if I compare like Street Fighter 6 to like Dragon Ball, that would not be a fair comparison, like at all, because they're two fundamentally different games. So just saying like Street Fighter and Dragon Ball are simple games, therefore bad, is like you have to look at each game and what they're trying to do, and like how well is it implemented with the system that's in place. I don't think it's inherently bad that Street Fighter 6 doesn't have like older like style Street Fighter combos and like drive rush is a thing. Like, I don't think that's necessarily an issue on its own. It's like how is it implemented is the problem. And even then, I don't think drive rush is a bad mechanic. I think it's fun, but you know, I know a lot of people don't like it. But that's like a whole nother argument. That's a whole nother argument.
I gotta preface this with one thing, and that namely is that I am not an older fan, right? I maybe compared
these videos
like,
might take a lot longer than I thought.
Like their
Holy
first
shit, we're about an hour in already.
Was like Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising, right? So like they started playing fighting games in like 2024. But you know, by and large, I am very much more of like you know, I'm more of that like still that newer generation of fighting game players. Like you know, everyone played I played like Tekken 4 on my PlayStation 2 when I was like 6 or whatever the hell, right? Sure, but like the first fighting game that I played with any amount of actual like thought going into, hey, this is a fighting game. I want to get better. I want to learn. I want to like engage with this on a deep level. Was
Drive Rush is a fun mechanic, but how it's implemented is awful. Screen freezing, eating inputs is so cringe. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. The fact that you can like, like you can stick out like medium kick, and like if the opponent drive rushes, like your medium kick will not like hit them. Is like crazy as fuck. Like that's actually wild. It's all about the implementation, in my opinion. Some people will just like disagree with like what fighting games are doing, like on principle, but I feel like how it's implemented is also just as important as the idea itself.
Probably Dragon Ball Fighters in 2017, right? So again, preface to say that I am not an older fighting game fan. I am not the kind of person who is quote unquote being alienated by how modern fighting games are changing, right? Like, I mean, Dragon Ball Fighters as my first fighting game that had
oh, me and Brick are the same thing.
Got, like,
we both started with Dragon Ball.
It's got pretty easy combo execution. Everyone's only got quarter circles, right? Like even compared to some of the more modern fighting games, things in Dragon Ball Fighters are very, very streamlined and simplified as far as like some of the stuff that is traditionally difficult about fighting games, right? With that in mind, with that preface out of the way, this is just a gatekeeper mentality, right? I'm gonna be honest with you. Me personally, if like, I understand if maybe you're like, there were certain, you know, like one frame links being all over the place, something like that. Like it gave like a skill expression that I enjoyed, or something, like, you know, they gave like a flavor to those old games that is maybe like not as present, or I mean, some people would say completely missing, but I think that's actually just factually incorrect. Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising has one frame links for BMBs for some characters, right? It's just that you have to go searching out for like the really technically deep characters, and there are certainly many who are very simple, right? And Grand Blue's a very like beginner friendly game, but yeah, maybe it's like it's less present, so you're unhappy about that or something like that. I can understand that point. Everyone has their preferences. I'm not going to tell anyone that like their opinion is incorrect, right? However, if you think that it's like just generally like objectively a bad trajectory that fighting games are going in, I think it is just a gatekeeping mentality, right? And the big reason for that is that most of the ways that fighting games are getting easier, quote unquote, Midnight mentions dash macros here, for example, it really is just, it's lowering the skill, or it's raising the skill floor, right? It just means that, you know, someone who is newer to the games is going to be better at them. Right. Aren't people complaining about fighters as much, I'm assuming, because of how high the ceiling got for combos? Maybe, yeah. So, and good that you mentioned it there, right?
Okay, so I know he's gonna go on, but I want to preface this. I think I've said this earlier. If they're going to make fighting games easier, they have to compensate it by adding more decision making and mental stacks in exchange for that. So I know Fighters is being brought up a lot in this video because obviously he's played the game and stuff like that, but I tend to bring up Fighters a lot because it's the game that I'm most familiar with. And I know a lot of people will say Fighters is just the boom, big damage, super dash, no neutral game. But if you actually sit down and learn like the actual fundamentals of Fighters, it's literally completely different. Like super dash is very strong in that game, but there are many characters and many techniques that you can use to negate super dash as an option. In most cases, there's tons of defensive mechanics to deal with it, but in exchange, like you 50-50 off like almost everything. Like unless you're like a dedicated grappler or like a frame trap character, mostly everyone has 50-50s at some point in like their block string or their level 3. So like you will get an opportunity to mix somebody up in that game, but it's like, and to compensate for that, there's like guard cancels, there's active tag, there's reflect, that's frame 1. Like there's everything in Dragon Ball is super cranked up and powerful. So you have to like always keep in mind that these options are a thing, and like the mental stack of that is where the game gets hard, because you have to be aware of so many, at some points too many things, but in most cases like 3 to 4 options you have to be aware of, and like maybe 2 out of the 4 can be negated by like a safe jump, and the other 2 you have to like safe jump backdash, or just run up and do nothing, or reflect, you know. So like you have to keep like multiple options like in mind when playing Fighters at the higher level. And I think that's where Fighter shines, is that there's so much things to like look out for and keep in mind that like if you're not good at it, you will just get snowballed, and it sucks, but that's just how the game is. And yeah, that's just how it is for me. I think that's what makes fighters enjoyable.
Because again, a lot of these things, you know, Grand Blue having simple inputs, right? Your dash macros, combo execution being lowered, things like that.
I got you one of the boot up fighters,
right? It's making it so if you are
hey, the more fighters players, the better, bro. Because the player base has dwindled a significant amount, and you know, if I can get somebody to play with on a regular basis, bro, that should be great. And also, I just love teaching fighters. Like I just love teaching it. Like I like playing it, but like the best avenue for me is teaching it to people. I find it very fun because fighters is like so expressive and like free forming that like anyone can pick up any team, and like I can teach them something about it, or like I can show them an idea, and then like they come back to me like a week later and they'd be like, look what I did, and then like they find some like fucked up mix up or like this really cool like TOD for like 1 bar of meter, and it's like, god damn, like you came up with that in a week. And they're like so proud of it, and I'm like, yes, that's what I love to see. That's what I love to see. Like I've been like at my local group, like I've gotten like 2 people into Dragon Ball, just by showing them like what the game actually is, and they've also played the game before, but they're like, I stopped playing in like season 1 or season 2, and like when I show them the stuff that you can do now in the game with like all the special cancels, all the new characters and stuff like that, they're like, bro, this game is fucking sick. I was like, the game, like the characters are not all the same, because I know that was a big thing when the game came out up to like season 2, is like all the characters feel the same. And it's like nowadays that's just not the case. Like every character feels unique in some aspect, in a certain way. And I love teaching fighters. It's great.
Completely new to fighting games.
Yeah, I'm only 3 minutes into this video. Right? Goddamn. I might have to fast forward through this.
Right? At the end of the day, the thing that makes you good at fighting games, usually, with some exceptions of games where like the technical execution is the entire thing. Sure. Even in those, by the way, that's like, it's more emphasized. But the thing that makes people good at fighting games is not how consistently they can hit X or Y or Z combo, even in games with like some more difficult combo execution, right? Even in like, you know, some of the older Guilty Gears, even in, you know, Strive still has some pretty tough stuff, though, again, simplified compared to older Guilty Gears. You would find people who had like really bad combo execution for being at a professional level, and they would still like do all right, because the decision making, the conditioning, the reading your opponent, the picking up on their habits, things like this are like really difficult to remove from fighting games. And yeah, by and large,
that's what I was talking about earlier,
right?
Like the mental stacking.
Like the worry, the fear, I believe, is that it's not raising the skill floor, but rather lowering the skill ceiling, right? And I sort of fundamentally disagree with the idea that that's happening at all, right? A lot of these games have a lot of hidden complexity that beginners don't even know about, right? Even with all these simplifications. A concrete example of this, right, is, you know, Grand Blue. We talk about Grand Blue, we'll talk about Street Fighter 6 as well, but like Grand Blue is, by all intents and purposes, a very simple game from the outset, right? And you might even argue that like some of the system mechanics have genuinely, like you could make an argument they like genuinely removed some sort of depth, right? It's like you and like when I say depth, I don't mean like technical execution. I mean like literally, you know, the conditioning, the reads, the RPS, like the core of what it is to be a solid, strong fighting game player has been lessened by things like, you know, you could say that neutral has been de-emphasized in Grand Blue because of how strong 6XL is as a neutral skip option, right? Or that like defense.
I can agree with that.
And you know, the risk reward and calculating your options, picking the correct options on defense.
I still hold to this day that Grand Blue has some of the, well, not the worst, but some of the worst defensive options I've ever used in a fighting game. BC feels bad to use. I'm glad it's not plus anymore, but my god, I don't like using BC. It feels so bad to use. Dodging and rolling feels like shit. Especially in neutral, bro, where you think that's where like it would shine. It does, like, it literally feels like dodging and rolling shit does not matter. Try rolling and dodging like pressure strings. Oh, your opponent is still plus. They're like +1 and it hits you. If you dodge a fireball or roll a fireball, the opponent can run after the fireball and 6XL you, so you can't frame trap them out of there or poke them out. If you're up against Fairy, now that her frame data is a lot faster and less punishing, like what do you do against Fairy? Like, unless you got a character that like wins that matchup just outright, like what do? You can't roll or dodge her. She has a half screen low attack. You're not rolling that shit. What do you do? Like, rolling and dodging feels so bad. Like, my god. And like BC feels bad to use too. Like, I don't like the defense Grand Blue. It feels like shit. Anyway,
I've been de-emphasized by the fact that Brave counter is so strong, right? And
I don't like using it. It feels bad to use.
Like, you would be correct in that, you know, Brave counter, for example, was too good for most of the game's lifespan, right? Wouldn't it be lowering the skill floor, making these things easier? Not saying it is a bad thing, just wanted to clarify. Well, I mean, when I say lowering the skill floor, I mean making the worst you can be at the fighting game better. But yeah, so there's an argument that, yeah, if those mechanics are way too strong, then sure, yes, maybe it doesn't, at some point, it, you know, does not matter how good you are at neutral or footsies or spacing or whiff punishing or reading your opponent's habits or whatever, if, you know, you can Brave counter or you can 6XL and go through it. But even with that in mind, even before those system mechanics got nerfed, right? It's not like you could just, it's not like people were just winning off the system mechanics alone. And it's not like even someone who was okay at the game, right? Release Grand Blue, right? Where 6XL was at its most belligerent, Brave counter was at its most belligerent, right?
True.
Even people who were like, you know, intermediate masters, which is already, you're talking like top 3-4% of the player base, right? Even like intermediate level masters would get washed 9 times out of 10 by like the actually really strong players. Right?
True.
And that's not even talking, and again, that's like, you're talking person who on a wider scope, right? Person who is really good at the game versus person who is really good at the game. And even then, there is a big enough gap that, like, you know, people like, if you you know, I mean, I wasn't an intermediate level master on Grand Blue release, right? Like, you would see, like, you know, first to 10s of like tournament level players versus just guys who were pretty good at the video game, and it will be like 10-4, 10-2, 10-3, right? It will be stomps. It will be complete, like just get completely fucked on. Then that was when you had, quote unquote, like the most things that could potentially have lowered the skill ceiling of the game in one of the conceptually simplest fighting games ever released, right? In Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. So again, I really think that you can't, since the main thing that makes fighting games difficult, the main thing that rewards player skill is the mental game of fighting games.
I agree.
It's really difficult to actually just remove that in any way, shape, or form. Because even if you add really strong options, right? Even if you add really strong universal neutral skip options or defensive options or what have you, that all that does is it basically refactors the risk-reward equation that people are doing in their heads, right? And yes, sometimes things can be so over-centralizing that they make the game maybe boring to play, right? That's a whole other factor, right? That's a whole other factor.
True.
Where, like, if this option is so good that the whole game revolves around it, like how defense worked with Brave counter in Grand Blue, right? If the option is so good that, like, all defense and all defensive interactions and all offensive interactions just revolve around it and how to stop it, that might make the game more boring. Yes, that's one thing. But it does not at all change how much better a actual strong player is going to be around playing around that option compared to someone who is more intermediate or, you know, God forbid, a complete beginner, right? So my thoughts in general, Midnight, I think, are that I think by and large, it is people who grew up with something who they loved and they cared about, and they watched it change, and maybe some of the things that changed about it are things that they cared deeply about that are no longer quite, you know, there.
I'm letting him speak because it's a rather long video, so
I can understand.
But most of the stuff I agree with.
You know, there was some Potemkin getting his car cancels taken away in Guilty Gear is a great example of this, right? I can understand, for example, that it's like I spent all of these times labbing these like Kara backward Mega Fists combos, something like that, or even Geef, right? Geef getting his jump cancel SPD stuff taken away, right? Like maybe you think that it's, you know, this was something that I spent a lot of time labbing. This was like skill expression. It separated like really good Geefs from really bad Geefs, right? Like it was something that only higher level Geefs could do consistently without like, you know, fucking it up and getting this like counter hit on their wake up or what have you, right? They could actually use as a serious defensive option. And then, you know, when the devs remove stuff like that, now to be fair, the Street Fighter 6 devs did not remove they did not remove jump cancel SPD to make the game easier. They removed it to buff throws because they want throw loops to be very strong in this game. It's one of the big reasons that I'm not entirely sure they're going away in season 3. Maybe, I hope so. But like, you know, maybe not. Like, it seems to not really align with what the devs are going for right now. But that aside,
I know throw loops are a thing, and I hate dealing with them in Street Fighter.
Like this game
but
now, right?
I don't know the
like
high level
and the things that you
consequences
enjoy,
of it.
and like the feeling of, you know, working really hard at something and then being rewarded for it is kind of the entire reason that a lot of people play fighting games in the first place. At least the ones who get very dedicated and passionate, is that this is one of the genres of all video game genres. This is one of the ones that rewards your ability to like rewards the time you put into it and your ability to stay dedicated and to practice and to improve. This genre rewards that more directly and more visually and more clearly than almost any other genre in video game, right? And that there's and that feels it's amplified when there's all
I agree
these
with that
tiny
one,
little
too.
complexities that would not even be available to a beginner to even think about, let alone learn how to adjust to, right? Like when there's all these tiny little edge cases and things like this, right? So I can understand if you personally, right? If you personally have less fun with a game that has that is a little bit less, I guess, nuanced like that, a little bit less nook and crannied like that, right? But I don't think it makes it an inherently weaker fighting game, because again,
It depends. God damn, we're not even halfway through. You must yap a lot in this video. You must yap a lot about this topic. There's no timestamps. But yeah, it depends on what game we're talking about. I don't think it's a uniform thing when it comes to this. And I feel like a lot of people, when they talk about this topic, they're talking about like they're talking specifically about system mechanics. Like I've never seen, I don't want to say never seen, but it's much more rarer that people bring this topic up when dealing with specific characters, right? Is most of the time they're talking about a very specific system mechanic in a very specific game, and then they use that example to apply it to the whole genre, which is not only dumb, but is very short-sighted. Like, just because Super Dash exists in fighters doesn't mean, like, let's say for example, like back in like season 2 to like season 3, where like I despise Super Dash as a mechanic, and then like later on I learned to like deal with it, and it's like, yeah, it's annoying, but like I can deal with it now. But like in season 2, I hated the mechanic. Let's say like I was so mad at Super Dash that like I, on that principle, said that fighting games are getting worse and I don't like the genre anymore, and I just quit just because of one mechanic in one specific fighting game that has answers to it, right? I just wasn't good at dealing with it. Like, do you see how short-sighted that is? And I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing with like games. Like they're talking about one specific mechanic in a one specific game in a very specific context, and they're like, oh, the whole genre is bad. And it's just like, can we just talk about the game in question? Like whether or not it's good for the health of this game and not the whole genre? Because developers in different companies and different fighting games are doing different stuff, and like they're nothing the same. Like none of them plays the same. Like I don't know. Brick is a yapter. Yeah, if he doesn't like go over something like unique, I might have to like go to the next video. Maybe like the 15-minute mark, because like goddamn he yaps.
I'm repeating myself a little bit here. Doesn't all the character reworks have to be damn near perfect to be acceptable with minimal backlash? Like to say Pot's rework wasn't good. Yeah, I mean, again, people don't like change is what it is, right? People don't like the thing that they got used to changing, right? So
fair.
Two things can be equally, like, objectively, if there's no objective viewpoints, right? But hypothetically, two things can be equally good, and one person hates it and one person loves it, right?
Yes.
So there's a couple. Let me just to sort of restructure or to structure what I'm saying a little bit more properly here.
Before he goes into this next point, I will say this. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I feel like, in my experience, fighting game players are like the most objectively delusional community. And what I mean by that is that they personally believe that their take is so objective that they won't hear any other point of view like outside of their main group. Like they're so objectively delusional. And I'm not talking about like a majority of the player base. I'm talking about like the not even like the like pro players, because some of them are actually really nuanced and they like understand like the casual community, and like the mid-level player base has like very different values. But like the people that like say like, I'm part of the top percent, right? Therefore, I personally know what this game and the whole fighting game genre is supposed to be. Therefore, my opinion is objectively true. And it's just like, are you serious, bro? Like, are you serious? Like, those type of pro players, like they irritate me so much. They irritate me so much. And it's like, it could be like the most basic thing. Like for example, like let's just say like the Super Dash example. Like, what if I like went on to Twitter and say like Super Dash is the worst like mechanic like ever invented for a fighting game, and then someone like casually, like a casual player in fighters is like, I like Super Dash because it allows me to do easier hit confirms because I'm not good at like doing like vanish cancels or something like that. Like if I'm playing like against Frieza or something and I don't know how to like moon jump at Frieza to like get in, I just have a Super Dash button to deal with it. And then I'm like, no, you're objectively wrong because fighting games back in the day didn't have a Super Dash button. You had to learn how to micro dash that shit. Your opinion is bad and I'm right. This is what fighting is supposed to be. And like the people down below are like, bro, it's not that deep. I just like having an option at my level. And it's just like your opinion is your opinion. Like there's valid criticisms to it. But like you shouldn't like shut other people down for having an opinion like, I like this mechanic because it helps me in a very specific context. Like it's just like my god, like people like that doesn't understand like there's different levels to these topics. It's just so crazy to me. And I think fighting game players are the worst of it. FGC is like anime Twitter, bro. Dude, the people that don't like OG like anime and like they're like, oh, I like the newer anime more than the older anime, and they're like, what are you talking about? Older anime is the GOAT. What are you talking about? Type shit. Clip that so Twitter can hear it. Bro, people don't listen to me on Twitter, but that is a good clip though. I might make that into a short. Alright, I'll watch him for like maybe like 5 more minutes, and then we'll go to the next video if he doesn't bring up another point. Thank you everyone for making it this far into the video. Just gonna take a quick break to do some shoutouts. First, shoutouts to my friends' channels. Please consider checking them out as they provide a variety of content, so at least one of them will have something that you'll enjoy. Second, if you live near the York, PA area, please head down to Ready Up Gaming Lounge. It's a place where gamers from every genre can come together and play in a comfortable and chill environment. They are open from 11 AM to 8 PM every day and hold dedicated events every week. For my channel's interest, they run Fighting Fridays, where for $5.30, you can play a multitude of fighting games with various players. They have big games like Street Fighter 6, Tekken 8, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but they also have niche games like Dragon Ball FighterZ, Guilty Gear Strive, Rivals of Aether 2, and more. Finally, shout out to all my supporters on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. You guys really make doing content fun and worth pursuing. Alright, back to the video. I feel like he's kind of yapping at this point.
Kind of jumping all over the place. So there's, I think, 3 reasons that I disagree with this. That disagree with the idea that the direction modern fighting games are going and that they're making a lot of things that traditionally were a little bit more obtuse, easier to use. I don't think that's a bad thing. Because, one, I feel like it is, realistically, it's making bad players better, sure, but it is still not making them anywhere near as good as people who actually put time and effort into the fighting game, right? So again, it is raising the skill floor, it is making bad players better at the game than they were, but it is not lowering the skill ceiling, almost ever, right?
Okay, I want to rephrase this. It doesn't make bad players better, it makes them have fun easier. I want to change it because just because all the inputs in fighters are core circles, that still won't make a bad player good at fighters. Like if they don't know how to use the special moves, just because they can use it, therefore they can do more combos and pressure and they can have more fun, does not make them better at the game. So I kind of agree with this, but I would change the phrasing from making bad players better to having bad players have more fun. I would change it to that, because bad players will always be bad no matter what, unless they actually want to improve. So I agree with that, but I'd change the wording on it.
Because that mental aspect of fighting games is really hard to patch out. Now, if it makes a fighting game not quite as much of your cup of tea, if you don't...
Bad players deserve to have fun for the $70 they paid. True! Me before you get modded by Twitter. Yeah, like everyone deserves to have fun in fighting games, you know? And so making the game unnecessarily difficult, it's just not going to get you a strong player base. Like, I've always, like... I've wanted a classic style fighting game to release in the modern day to see how it does. Like, what if, like, I know this would never happen, but let's just say, like, well, maybe. What if Street Fighter or Capcom did a re-release of the older titles, right? Like, all their, like, original, like, bells and whistles and shit. Like, all of them in one big collection, because I think Mortal Kombat is doing that too. But what if Street Fighter did it? I'm very curious on, like, how many players would, like, leave the more modern Street Fighter games and play the older ones. They did a fighting game collection. Yeah, I know for that one. I think it was the Marvel versus games, and then it was the, what was it, SNS, not SNES, SNK? Was it SNK games? But I'm talking about more like the traditional Street Fighters. Like, what if they like re-release Street Fighter 3? Like, I'm very curious on like how many people would like actually stick to that game. Oh, they did. Oh, I didn't know about that. Damn. That sucks. I didn't even know about that. Goddamn. But yeah, like people just on average just like modern fighting games more because they're just the barrier to entry is nowhere near as big. That's just what it is, right?
Don't like the idea of like universal system mechanics, something like that, fine. But it doesn't make the fighting game any easier to get really, really good at, right? Number two.
Wait, what did you say about universal mechanics?
But it doesn't make the fight as much of your cup of tea. If you don't like the idea of like universal system mechanics, something like that, fine. But it doesn't make the fighting game any easier to get really, really good at, right? Number two, I actually also think that it's kind of making fighting games more accessible is a good thing. Right?
Yes.
Because and it's a good thing, not just for the genre, we want more sales and we want devs to have more money so they can make better games or what have you. It's also a good thing because games with bigger player bases have a stronger competitive scene, right?
Yes.
I think it is,
on average, yes.
You can maybe find some exceptions, but in general, if a game has 2 million people playing it, it is a lot harder to be the best person in the world at that game than a game that has 10,000 people playing it, right? So
True.
Even for...
Sorry about that. I had to go deal with a centipede. I think that's what you call them. Anyway, it was climbing on my wall and I killed it. Alright, sorry. What was he saying?
Things getting discovered, people competing and rising to the top, right? Games becoming more accessible and fighting games as a genre growing and having more exposure, right, is going to be something that is going to inevitably lead to more competition. And more competition.
Yeah, I agree with this shit. Yeah.
At the highest level, a higher level of competition, in my opinion, right? So we're not, even to begin with, we're not really losing skill ceiling, because I still don't think like, you know, some really fucked up like combo that you know has like 7 one-frame links in it or something like that. Sure, it's cool, but like I don't think that usually even like in those games that have them, right, the best players in the world are not the ones who are hitting that shit all the time, right?
And I also want to say that in most cases, stuff like that doesn't impress casual players, right? Like, just because, like let's just say, like older Street Fighter, like, let's just say Street Fighter 3, for example, right? What if, like, let's just say, like, Ken has, like a combo that requires, like, 2 frame 1 links, a micro dash, and a card cancel to do, right? Most casual players won't even know what the fuck you're doing. Like, they just think it's a regular B&B where you do, like, button A plus button B plus button C plus A and B together. Like, that's what they see, right? They don't even know what's happening. But like, to people that actually know what the game is, they're like, oh, that's really impressive. But like, to a casual player, it's just like, oh, that's cool, I guess. Like, that's not gonna draw people in, you know? So yeah, having that stuff is good, but it's not gonna draw in people for the most part, because they don't even know what the fuck is happening.
See people say making the games more approachable is bad, is that they're trying to pull in people that will play a week and then never again. I think that's a big worry. I think if that is not, well, that's obviously not the goal, right? The goal.
Wait, what did he say? What did he say?
I think if they're trying to pull in people that will play a week and then never again, I think that's a big worry. I think
they're not, though.
That is not, well, that's obviously not the goal, right? The goal.
Do people realize, like, back in the day when people played older fighting games, there weren't many other options? Like, I'm genuinely curious if they understand that, right? I personally go into the arcade to play Street Fighter, like Street Fighter 2 or some shit, and like maybe there was like another cabinet for like Mortal Kombat, but those were like your only like fighting games. Now in this modern age, there's so many other games just in general, but like there's tons of other fighting games that like it's hard to keep a player base consistently, like in any like faculty, right? Because there's just so much competition. So their goal is to entice people for as long as possible, not just, oh yeah, we'll just get people that play it for a week and then cash in and then just coast by until the next game comes out. Like that's clearly, that's not what they're trying to do, right? The only reason why like fighting games like was a very grassroots type of community is because there weren't many other options, right? Just inherently, because either money issues or arcade, like having very specific games or stuff like that. Like if you were a fighting game player, like back then, you probably only had access to like what, like 3, maybe 4 games at a time, like at like average. But like nowadays, there's like what, like 20 plus on the market right now that you can play right now and get a decent player base to play with. Not to mention all the other games like in other genres. Like the competition is high, and so like when you're competing for not only other fighting games but other genres as well, making the skill floor and making it easier for people to play is just inherently what you need to do in order to keep your game stable. Is because if you gatekeep with like this mentality that like things need to be hard for the sake of being hard, you're not going to draw any people in the long term, because people are just like, this game is gatekept from me because I don't have legacy skills. Like dude, that was like the biggest criticism for Tekken for the longest time, is that like I would not put, like so many people will say like I won't play Tekken because it requires legacy skill. And whether that's true or not, that's the perspective that people have of fighting games. And like lowering that barrier by saying, hey, you can come to our game and you can do button into super and you can do decent damage and have fun. Like that's way more enticing than being like, oh yeah, you have to learn this and this to even be at the baseline of our skill floor. Like that's not enticing to people. Like making games easier was this natural progression of fighting games. Like, and people acting like it, like that's like some alternative motive by developers is like that's the only route they could have gone for the modern era, with so much competition within and outside of the genre, you know? Anime fighting games saved the genre. I don't know about saved it. I still think if Street Fighter 6 came out, like, I don't know. Cause like most people, when they talk about like the worst it's been is like near like Street Fighter 5 era of games. I'm not sure like on the fighting game timeline, but that's like where like most people say like, oh yeah, the Street Fighter 5 era wasn't that good. And it's just like, I think that even without anime games, I still think they could have like, I think if Street Fighter 6 still came out the way it was, I still think it still would have done well. I don't know like if fighters in like like in 2018 saved the fighting game community. I don't know. It definitely did help though. It definitely did help. But I don't know about saved. How many Street Fighter style games are there to compare to anime? The majority of grounded footsie base are Capcom SNK. Anime fighting games are so plentiful. Oh, okay, that's what you mean. Okay, yeah, and quantity, yeah, because it's a lot easier to get people to play more anime games because there's a lot more freedom, the character variety is way more vast, things are just more powerful in anime games, and people just like the anime style more than like the Capcom style. I think in this new modern era of like art styles per se, like people are way more receptive to like the more smooth colored like anime style than like the realistic people and shit like that, you know? But yeah, I can see that. Yeah, like the quantity and also quality of anime fighters just increased significantly. So yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8 was a good resurgence, especially since they launched like months apart from each other. True. Yeah. All right, we'll give like Brick maybe like a couple more minutes to yap, and then we'll move on to the next video because we're gonna be here forever.
The goal is to trick people into eating their vegetables and then hold them there, right? Like, yes, maybe some people are going to check out the game and they'll be like, it's not really for me, right? But the goal is very much to get people in there, right? Get people involved, and then hopefully they like the game enough they actually convert it into full-time like players, right? They don't end up trying it for a week and then leaving. That is the inevitable result of trying to get anyone into anything. It's just not going to click for some people, right?
Yes.
But what you're trying to do is no matter how easy or hard the game is, if someone chooses to interact with it, for some people it's just not gonna work. It's just not gonna click, right? They're not going to have a good time. So there's really nothing we can do about that.
You know what's funny? This is kind of like a weird example, but hear me out. Have any of you guys played Sonic Riders, the original game on I think came on the GameCube and the PS2? That game was so mechanically deep that it's personally one of my favorite racing games ever. But it was so mechanically deep, and the game didn't really teach you it. You kind of just had to figure it out, that numbers wise it didn't do that great. And when the sequels came out, they kept like making it easier and easier to play. And so I think that's what fighting game players are worried about, is that they will keep making it simple and simple to the point where like it loses its identity. And from that point of view, I kind of get it, because like if you like compare like the original Riders to like Zero Gravity, is night and day. They don't play any similarly, right? They're good additions to Zero Gravity, but the main base gameplay loop of Zero Gravity is fundamentally different. Like there's no air gauge, there's this like gravity mechanic, the way that the boards work are fundamentally different. So like they instead of like refining what the original game did, they just threw the entire foundation of the original Riders and just started brand new with Zero Gravity. And I feel like that's what fighting game players think that the developers are doing, but they're just refining what they already have in place, right? And I think that's the misconception that I think fighting game players are doing. They think that it's like a Riders effect, even though they've probably never played Riders. They think that from Riders to Zero Gravity is a fundamental shift, where in fighting games it's just a refinement of what they already have. By refining it, I mean like simplifying certain combos or certain aspects of like pressure, adding system mechanics that help people at the baseline but still has counterplay to it to help people that want to engage with the system mechanic like feel like they're learning. Like they're adding on to what they already have. And I feel like that's the misconception that most fighting game players are having right now, is that they don't understand that what developers are doing are refining what they already have. I just don't want every game to become Smash Brothers level of simplicity. No, I agree with that. I feel like I think the like only argument that I will stand with, like 100%, is that motion inputs need to be in a fighting game. And once again, it depends on what game you're making, because if a game is based around having special buttons and like these specials like have like own unique interactions and stuff like that, like there has to be something to compensate for having a special button, right? There needs to be more added to it because you're making it easier to use, right? But fundamentally, I think motion inputs need to be part of the genre in any aspect, right? Even if it's just quarter circles and like DPs or down downs, like there needs to be some form of motion inputs, because I feel like not just because it adds depth, but I think that's just makes the genre stand out as a product, right? Like that's just like if like platformers like started adding like dedicated motion inputs to jumping, like it just wouldn't fit the genre, right? Like say like for example like in a platformer you had to do quarter circle X plus up to just do a simple jump, like that wouldn't make sense for that genre, right? So like I feel like motion inputs are like engrooved into the genre itself, you know? Not saying that games can't exist with a special button, but I feel like for the most part, motion inputs need to be in the game. For me personally, because I feel like it's part of the core aspect of the genre itself.
That except try and make a game that is as fun as possible, so that when people do try it, they don't just stay for a week and then leave, right? And one of the ways to do that is to lower the barriers to entry, right? But again, lowering the barrier, I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but so, you know, I feel like I'm sometimes rephrasing things in different ways can sort of help convince people who might have different ideas, right? Lowering the barrier to entry does not mean, again, lowering the maximum possible skill at something, right? Anyone can get on a starting line and run, right? Like a lot of like physical sports have the lowest possible barrier to entry you could imagine, right? Well, I mean, I guess you could argue that trainers and things like that, there's like economic reasons, surely, right? Fair enough. But, you know, bear with me for a second. A lot of things have very low barriers to entry, and it's not like everyone is just running around being fucking gods at them, and there's no difference between the best in the world and some random hobbyist, right? So I think, if anything, making the games more approachable lessens the amount of people who are going to pick up the game for a week and never try it again. Because some people, you can convince them to try, like, you know, like they finally pick up some Street Fighter 4 or something like that, and it's too difficult for them. You can call them a baby, whatever. They can't get into the point where they feel like they are doing cool, fun things in the fighting game that quickly, right? It just kind of feels like they don't really know how to move around the screen. They're kind of bumbling about. It's not super comfortable, and then they burn off of it, right?
I think that it's not. Honestly, I think this is more a societal issue. Most people in today's age are more they want, how do I phrase this without being a jackass? Hold on, give me a minute. Yes, instant gratification era. That's what I was thinking of. Instant gratification, right? Where in the past, like I brought up, like in a fighting game community, you would only have like what, 3 or 4 arcade games at a time, and so you had a lot more time to play and to learn and to engage, even though the skill floor was like really hard to get to. Like you didn't have, first of all, you didn't have any other options. Second, you had a local group in most cases to help you like maneuver your way. Number 3, the internet didn't exist, so competition was way more local, and so everyone was relatively the same kind of strength, and so they built each other up. Whereas in the more internet era, a day one player can run into like, let's just say like in a casual like online lobby, right? The ranked mode doesn't exist. A casual player can run into the best player in the world in an online setting, get destroyed, and be like, I never want to play this game again. Whereas back in the day, at your local group, you were all relatively around the same level, and if somebody was actually like that much better, you had that player interaction to be like, hey, how did you do that? Or like, how can I learn from this guy? Whereas in the internet age, like, people just hop on online matchmaking, play against people randomly. If they get their ass kicked, they hop off for the day, and then they're like, oh, well, the game sucks, so I'm not gonna play it, right? There's no player interaction in most like fighting game, like online areas, right? And like, I think those things contribute to like the instant gratification that players seek, right? Because like, if they're not instantly good at a game, then they'll just get washed online, and they'll feel like this game is fucking hard, I don't like it, and they'll just leave. And like, they have many other options to go to, where like, let's just say like somebody played Street Fighter 6 and they're like, I don't understand Drive Rush or Links or anything, I'm gonna go play Grand Blue, where the game is vastly easier, and be like, oh, I can get to like Master's rank just because like it's easier to pick up the character that I know how to play and that I enjoy, rather than getting to Masters of Street Fighter, where it's way more matchup intensive, and there's links involved, and there's drive rush cancels and stuff like that. So like, there's the instant gratification is a very big thing, but I think that's more of a societal thing. FGC wants to see immediate results from doing anything, even if it's mashing senselessly. I don't want to say the FGC wants that. I would say people from outside the FGC wants that, because people within the FGC at some point wants to learn and to improve, and so they'll go to other people to do that. But the people that don't engage with that community won't look for that, right? I don't think it's the FGC that wants senseless mashing. It's the people outside that trying to get in wants that to bridge them into the community. But like, if it doesn't work out for them, then they won't stick around. That's the problem. And so like, you're at this weird dichotomy where you want players to play the game as best as possible, but like, if the game isn't suited for it, then it's like, well, I'm just gonna go to a game where it is like that. Grand Blue is a psyop to trick people into playing other fighting games. Honestly, I think Grand Blue is the best beginner fighting game right now. I think it's the best one. I thought back then I would say Fighters was that game, but I think Grand Blue is better at the beginner level. I think FGC as of 2010 felt that way, but as of 2025, the current FGC wants more of that Grand Blue era. I can't speak for the 2010s. I won't speak on that. But from what I see, a lot more people are way more critical of the games coming out nowadays. And so you have a lot more varying opinions. So I don't know if the modern FGC has a dedicated, like, what we want. I think it's just way too big, and it's way too big for the fighting game community to have consensus on anything. I think it's just way too big for that now. Which is a good and bad thing. Alright, we're about halfway done. This guy yaps for a little bit. Alright, anyway, check out this guy's video. I would watch the rest, but he yaps on for a while, so we'll just move on.